All right. So usually we start off these calls with a kind of general introductions. I know you guys probably know each other, but if you want to share anything about your program that you're setting up, where you're from, anything that has been, we try to share success stories, so anything that's been going well lately. I'll introduce myself because I haven't really met you guys on video yet. My name's Erin. I'm the outreach coordinator here at the National Phenology Network. So you probably have got some emails from me already. I send out all the newsletters that are part of Nature's Notebook, as well as different newsletters we have for our partners, and also all of our campaign emails. So you probably have seen some information about the Nature's Notebook campaigns we have. We have a number of them, I think 8 right now and more next year, focused on particular species that are of interest to researchers or natural resource managers. And so those are a great way to kind of jump into monitoring things that are, where the data are going to be used right away. And it's just a great way to kind of get started if you're not sure what to track. So I also do a lot of development with different partners, helping local phenology programs get set up. And I do a lot of this stuff on the website. So if you ever have any questions about your programs, if you get stuck or you have problems with the app or anything like that, feel free to reach out. So do you want to just go around? Kirsten, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Kirsten. I live up in sort of northern Colorado, a little north of Denver, in a community called Longmont. And I recently left a position at, I was working in Denver at the Botanic Gardens there and in education. So I've always, there's actually a phenology trail in Denver Botanic Gardens. So I've always wanted to do something with that, as well as bring some environmental education programming to where I live, because I think we're in kind of an environmental ed desert. There's not a lot going on in our community. And we definitely have underserved populations here that, as I think everyone benefits from environmental education, children and adults. But so that's kind of my project, and it's really just beginning. And, I saw the class. It was really good timing because I left my position. I would not have had the time to do this if I was working and commuting, and so I'm just kind of getting started, and the class is helping me kind of formulate my ideas. I'm meeting with another local environmental education person who lives in a neighboring town, and he has been pretty successful getting some programming started there. So that's what I'm going to do next week. That's kind of my next step.
That's great. Welcome. So we were really interested in helping our local phenology leaders reach out to underserved audiences and trying to diversify the people that are participating in Nature's Notebook. So we are planning to have some more targeted things next year. We're talking about a series of webinars where we bring in people who have been successful at reaching out to different groups and hear from them and have kind of like a panel discussion, and then eventually have some sort of guidance information about that. So yeah, definitely stay tuned on that, and we hope you can be a part of that. It'll probably be in the spring next year.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see, Erin?
Yeah, I am a middle school teacher at the Greenspire School in Traverse City. I started this program last year at the same time at a different school that I worked at in the suburbs of Chicago. And I'm basically really passionate about getting kids outside and getting them more connected to the land around them. So I thought phenology would be a great way to do that. Saw the class and everything, got super interested. So yeah, just looking to develop a program anew. And the school year started in early September, so we've been having various levels of success with different groups, but basically we're planning out the loop that we can walk still. So just like a slow process, but Also rewarding, and right now it's like the height of leaf color, and not all the leaves have dropped, so it's just like really stunningly beautiful, and the days have been super mild, so it's always a lovely walk.
Oh, that sounds great. Thanks for being here. And then Chris, welcome. Sorry about not sending you the passcode.
I clicked on that. And I'm like, oh no, ask me for a passcode. I don't know what that is. So anyway, yeah, finally got in, so that's good. So yeah, my name is Chris. I live in northern Minnesota. We also are in the middle of peak fall colors, so which is awesome. And in, let's see, end of June, I started a new job at a place called the Forest History Center. And they're part of the larger organization, the Minnesota Historical Society, which has about 26 different sites across the state that they manage. So our site is one of those. And the bread and butter of that facility has been their replica logging camp. And that has been kind of their visitorship experience. And just the hiking trails that they have and the interpreters that they have at the logging camp. And our site manager has always had a passion for expanding on environmental education. And so this year they were able to get funds to create my position, which is an adventure educator, is my title. And so part of my job this summer, I spent developing a kayak program on the Mississippi River and getting people out, just kind of, yeah, it's super fun. Getting them out and just kind of sharing the forest through paddling on the river and looking at whatever we can find, talking about wild rice and eagles and beaver and
can I come?
Trees. Absolutely. Anytime.
We'll have a field trip up there. That sounds awesome.
And so, yeah. And then, I've, with some other experiences that I've had, and I've heard of Nature's Notebook, and I am super, super fortunate to have a longtime phenologist in the community there. His name is John Latimer. And he's been doing radio phenology for decades.
Wow.
And he has done a lot of phenology in the classroom in different communities and helps teachers get programs set up and things like that. And he's come and led hikes at our facility and things like that. So I was talking to him and just like, what can we do to do phenology on a more long-term ongoing basis? And he said, oh, you need to get hooked up with Nature's Notebook. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, I heard about that years ago, and you're right, I need to do that. So it just kind of worked out, and I had actually signed up for the spring class thinking I have so much to do this fall. And then I was told, no, you need to do it now because it may not be there in the spring. And I'm like, okay, well, alrighty then. So here I am. And just trying to, it's actually working out really good schedule wise too. So it'll be a good thing, but I'm excited to get some sites set up, and I've got a couple of volunteers that are super excited about wanting to help out. Minnesota has a pretty good master naturalist program. And so their program has been going since I think 2007 or something like that. So there's a lot of volunteers around that are always looking for things like that to do. And so I think I can tie some of them in and get them active in doing the monitoring and things like that. And then tying in the elementary school that's adjacent to our property. And then I want to tie in, there's other things. I've got large plans, but I'm trying to keep it manageable and small right now.
That's smart. Start small. That's always good. Yeah, you guys have got a great community up there in Minnesota for phenology for sure. There's also the Minnesota Phenology Network, which is it's mostly coordinated by people at the University of Minnesota.
Okay.
And
Yep.
yeah, so there's some really great resources there. They do trainings around the state, or they used to. I don't know if they do them in person anymore, but
Yeah,
they're great people
and
to
I
connect
went
to.
to one of those, oh my gosh, it's been a long time ago. And that's kind of how I heard about it the first time. And I started looking into it and just never had time to do anything with it. But yeah, I have looked at their site too. And so just getting on board with them. And then Lorianne had mentioned the Indigenous Phonology Network also. So where I am, we have 3 reservations that are right around us. And so I'd like to develop some programming with them at some point up the trail as well.
Yeah, definitely get linked up with Rebecca Montgomery. She's one of the originators of the Minnesota Phonology Project, and she's been really great about trying to connect with Indigenous communities at all the different sites that they have. So
Okay.
she knows about, like, yeah, the best ways to go about doing that. I know it's tricky sometimes when you're first approaching a community if you don't really have contacts there,
Yeah.
because you don't want to come across as, you know, asking them to do something for you. So I think it's kind of
Right.
delicate to, you know, first reach out and say you want to collaborate, but you want it to be something that they want to do and will
Right.
benefit them. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think she
yep.
probably has, we're hoping to have her a part of that workshop I mentioned, because she's done a
Okay.
lot of great work, Rebecca.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. It's really nice to be able to have these calls with you all, because we are, you know, a very small national coordinating office with all of these hundreds of great local phonology leaders across the country. So this is one of the only times we really get a chance to talk, not really face to face, but over Zoom with you
Yeah.
and hear from you. So it's really helpful to get feedback. And I've learned so much. Just this year, I've kind of taken over the calls from Lorianne, and I've learned so much about just what people are dealing with when they're like on the website and the resources they need and what's missing. So I really hope that these will keep going, and really you all will keep sharing with us. So the intention with the calls is, you know, to connect you all to each other and then to connect with us so you can give us feedback and we can give you resources. So we have a call topic every month. And this month we have the local phonology program dashboards, which is one of the visualization tools that we have on the website. We generally have one topic, but I always like suggestions for other things that people are interested in. This year, we've done quite a bit with the visualization tools. I'm really familiar with those. I've helped develop a lot of them, so I can pretty easily just, you know, take you through them. But there's other topics like working with youth that I'm not as familiar with that people wanted to talk about. So it's great to have, you know, the experience and knowledge of other people on the call for those too, because they have a lot of great stuff to share. So any kind of topic is, you know, we're open to, so you can suggest those on the community of practice page. I'll put that link in the chat. We have a form on there so you can put in suggestions, or you can just send them to me, or you could tell me today or put them in the chat if you have ideas right now. I do have something for next month. This was something that came up on our last call, and the person who wanted to do it isn't in the country this month, so I told her I would postpone it. But the that topic will be around really digging into looking at data on a particular species. So she was interested in, you know, if you have something like serviceberry, can you actually start to look at, you know, the 5 or 6 years of data that there might be in the database on that plant, and really get an idea of how things are changing over time. Are we seeing, you know, differences in flowering from year to year? And then how do you link that up to different climate drivers and see, you know, what might be behind those changes? So we're going to try to dig into that next month, but we don't have anything for December or next year. So feel free to suggest call topics. And then aside from the topic, we also just, you know, have time for answering any questions that you have. So I don't know if anyone has anything right now, just so we can make sure that there's time for it at the end. Do you all have any questions? No. Okay. Well, if you think of anything, feel free to let me know. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm not sure if you all have looked at this dashboard yet. I think it is part of one of the weeks of the course. But this is something that we make available for all of our local phonology programs. you might have seen that we have multiple visualization tools. Some of them are for looking at your phenology data. So that would be like exploring what you've reported about the plants and animals and what's happening with the phenology. The one I'm going to show you today is actually about looking at information about your observation activity and your observers that are part of your program. So as a, an administrator, we call it, or a local phenology leader for your program, it's really useful to be able to know certain pieces of information about what's happening with your program. So this is on the 4 groups menu at the bottom here, the phenology program resources. And there's a lot of stuff on this page, but if you scroll down to the section that says use and share data, this is where you'll see there are multiple tools here. And the one we're going to look at today is the local phenology program dashboard. So this is something that we had a lot of requests about, and we couldn't do this through the way that we did the visualization tool. We had to do something in-house kind of ourselves because we didn't have the resources to pay someone else to do it. So this is created by Teresa Crimmins, who's our director, in a software program called Tableau. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but it's a data visualization program that basically you import an Excel file into, and it makes really pretty graphs that are interactive. So it's kind of cool to be able to make things you can click around on. So on this page, we have 2 different dashboards. So I'm going to go through one at a time. So the one at the top, number 1, is the observation quantity dashboard. So this is all about how much data your local phenology program has submitted. One thing to note about this page is it's manually updated. So it was last updated on September 20th. And then Teresa will be updating it on Monday. So it's every 2 weeks. So if you come on here and you're like, oh, this isn't up to date, I don't see this activity from last week, that's why. And the other thing is when you first come up to this dashboard, we had to pick a default group, and we picked Audubon, California. They have lovely data. And so that is something you'd have to change when you get here. So if you want to look at yours, you would click on this, you would uncheck Audubon, California, and then you would either scroll through and find your group here, or you would type it in here. So I don't know what we would want to look for, but let's look at, is there near and dear to my heart here in Tucson, Tohono Chul.
I have a question about that, actually, just because I saw network that I have a question about. So it said K-12 school.
Yeah.
Is that, do you filter in all the schools in the program?
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. So in the group list, or the list of local phenology programs, we have a couple of things that we call parent groups that are mainly just categories to help us sort through, because we have so many groups. If we listed them all separately, it was getting to be this really, really long list, and people were having a hard time scrolling all the way through. So we put in these categories to help people that know they're looking for a K through 12 to find it more easily. The other thing about it, because it is kind of it's almost like a tag in the database. If you select K through 12, you're going to see all the K through 12 schools that are underneath that category.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome from like I don't know. I know it's not locationally relevant, but I think it's just interesting to see all the data that schools have collected. I think that might up the interest level.
Yeah. And we have that for botanic gardens and arboretums as well, colleges and universities. So there are a few of them like that you can kind of group them that way. So once you select the local phenology program here, you can see a number of different pieces of information. One is just a count of the phenology records by month for each of the sites that you have. So they have Tohono Chul Park is their site. If we were to pick another one, like if we go back to, we'd have to uncheck Tohono Chul. Let's go back to Audubon, California. And Audubon, California is actually also a parent group. So it has multiple chapters. And so this is all of their different sites of the different groups that they have. So if you have multiple sites, you'll see them all lined up here. And then you can see how many records by each month this is 2021. Because the database has gotten so big, we can only have 2 years on this dashboard now. So if you wanted to go back, you can look at 2020 if you want. but you can't look at from before then. So if you want data from prior, you would have to ask Teresa or me, and we can pull it for you manually. So this is just kind of a nice way if you wanted to do a summary. We like to suggest that if you're going to make an annual report about your program, this is a nice way to just pull graphs and charts directly, so you don't have to make them yourself. You could plop this into your annual report and say, this is, you know, our activity over the whole year. This is what we did. And it's just a nice way to have it pre-summarized for you. There's also some info here that breaks it down by species. So which ones were really observed the most. So Anna's hummingbird is coming up as the most observed for Audubon, California. The white-crowned sparrow is pretty high as well. Red-winged blackbird, mourning dove. So you can kind of get an idea of which ones are the most observed. And then you can also look at by category. So this is for animals, it's activity, development, reproduction. You know, for plants, it would be leaves, flowers, and fruits. So it'll give you a breakdown there. And then the last thing on this first dashboard is the site visits by month. And so you can see how many times someone went out to make a visit at each of your sites in the different months of the year. And the reason why this could be helpful is if you're trying to evaluate, you know, what was your activity like over the year? Was there a time when you had kind of a gap in your data collection where you might want to make sure it's more consistent next year? You can start to pick up those patterns from this. So you can see for this site here, Petaluma River Bridge, they went there in the middle of the year, but they didn't really have a lot of data at the beginning or the last couple of months here. So maybe next year they'd want to try to focus on that a little bit more if they're trying to record phenology that's specifically in those months. Any questions about this?
No.
All right.
Sorry, I was muted. I was just going to ask if that shows observations, but no data. You know, so if somebody went out and they're observing birds and, you know, those birds don't exist in the wintertime in that location or something like that, does it show that there was observations and they just didn't report any data? Or is it just blank because nothing happened?
Yeah, so it depends on whether they recorded those no reports. So if they recorded a no, that counts as a record, and so it still shows up. So, you know, this wouldn't tell you necessarily there's a lot more Anna's hummingbirds than any other species. It shows that there's a lot more records that were either yes or no, but they had more observations of those. But
okay.
yeah, so it doesn't tell you if they're positive records versus all records.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you wanted that kind of information, that's where you would go to the visualization tool to find out about, you know, when are the birds seen, when are you reporting a yes versus a no, and when is the peak in the number of yeses. You can find out all that stuff on the Viz tool.
Oh, okay.
But this is more about, like, you know, the quantity of observations.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so if you wanted to take any of these for a report or to share with your observers or just for your own use, then there's a number of ways you can download. So if you click on the download button, you can decide, do you want an image file? Do you want the data? That would give you an Excel file. Do you want the PDF, PowerPoint slide? So there's lots of different options here to download. So if I did a PDF, let's see what it gives me. Oh, and then you get some more choices. So do you want specific sheets? Do you want what you're looking at right now, which is on the whole screen here? You can also say, like, oh, I only want this pie chart. I don't want that. And then scroll through, I want that too. And then you can do some other lots of options here and then download. And then you get a downloaded file here. And then let's see what it looks like. So it's a PDF that has that information here and the two things that you selected. All right, and so then we come down, this is the second dashboard. So it's going to be reset to Audubon, California. So even if you change the top dashboard to your own program, you're going to have to do it again here. They're not actually linked. They're two separate things on the page. So we'll just keep it on Audubon, California. So this one is all about your observers. So the first graph here is how many observers were active. So how many observers submitted data in each month of the year. So this will show you maybe like your highest peak in activity in terms of observer activity was in May. And then this one here is by observer, showing you their individual activity. So this can be nice to kind of highlight if you want to call out a specific observer for their efforts and say, you are a rock star, you've been like collecting so much data for us, I really appreciate you. And maybe you give them, you know, an award or some sort of acknowledgement in an email or something. This is a great way to figure out who that is. And so you'll notice that there's no name here, right? There's no username, there's no email. What there is a person ID. And so the reason for that is this is public. We don't want to give out personal information about the observers here. So we have kind of a way to hide. Oh boy, I don't know what just happened there. It just reset itself. We have a way to hide that information by making it a unique identifier. And so I'm going to go back in a minute to show you how you figure out who that is by the ID, but we'll come back to that. Wow, this sun is really something here. I'm going to move myself over a little bit. Okay. All right, so then on the last dashboard here, this is just another way of looking at the information. So it's still the number of records by observer, but it lets you see more easily, you know, overall who's the top submitting observer here. So again, you get the person ID. So you would write down that it's 31,490 for your reference later. Any questions about that?
No. It's really lovely. Like everything's really easy to see and like, I don't know, it's really well laid out.
Oh, great. Thanks for saying that. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how you would figure out who that person ID is. So the place you do that is going to be on your observation deck. And so when you are an administrator for a local phonology program, you have this link here that says manage users. Are you guys familiar with that at all? Have you talked about that in the class yet? Okay. So if I was looking at a group, I think I might be administrator for a lot of these that I'm not an administrator for. I'll find one. I'm an administrator for all of these. Okay, not this one. So if I'm not an administrator, if I'm just a member of this group because I joined it, I can't see anything here. I can't make a new site. I can't edit any existing site. I can't do anything with the plants and animals because I don't have that privilege. If I change it to one that I do have that privilege for, then I get these links here. So I can, within this local phonology program, I can make a new site. I can add or edit the site. I can manage the users and then add the plants and animals and all of that stuff. So this manage users page is a very important one to remember because this is where you can see all the information about your members. And so if you click on the group here, you'll see this is a list of emails. And you'll see right here, it's called observer ID here, but that's the person ID. So this would let you reference who that is. If you have a lot of different people in your program, we have this group roster download, which is just an easier way to find that number. Because if you had, 20 people in here, it's hard to, you have to click through and kind of wait for it to update and then see and look at the number. But if you download the group roster, then you'll be able to easily check and see who's who. And the group roster, I think, actually gives you the username. So any questions about that? So that would be a great way to, reference, and then you could email that person or acknowledge them in some way, if you want to let them know that you appreciate their efforts. All right. No questions?
What if, I think it was mentioned that you could have a separate data entry person, but when they enter that data, then do they put in the observer's information, but also their name?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So yeah, you'll see this here. There's two different checkboxes right here. One is
Yeah.
group admin and one is data entry technician. So the person who is an administrator or the people who are able to go in and set other people as either of these things. And these aren't the same thing. So there's one is the group admin, and you can make a person both if you want, but they're not the same role. So the administrators are people who can create sites, edit sites, add plants and animals. But the data entry technicians, they're people who can enter data on behalf of another group member or edit observations from anyone in the group. So
Okay,
if you
but they
wanted
would-
someone to have both of those, you have to check both.
Okay, but they would be entering who the observer is, so that data
Yeah.
would get credited to that observer then.
Yeah, exactly.
Not-
So
Okay.
yeah, the way that this shows up is actually down on the enter observation data area.
Yeah,
So when you say you have a paper data sheet from Bob that you're going to enter for him, you would take that data sheet, and then I'm waiting for this to open, and then you would find Bob in the list.
oh,
And you
okay,
would say, because it says select the user that collected this data.
gotcha, okay,
And so then it shows up as Bob's. Or if
Yeah.
you needed to go in and
Yeah.
correct his data, you would change it to him and then go back and look and then fix the record that you needed to fix.
okay, that makes sense. Perfect.
All right, so we have one more dashboard that's actually on a different page because it didn't fit on this one. So it's hidden down at the bottom. And this is your registered observers. And this is actually all time. So it doesn't just show you the last 2 years. And this one's set as a different group, but you still would have to uncheck that group and then check yours to see it. So this will tell you who is registered, even if they haven't submitted any data over the course of your program. So this is a nice way if you've been going for a few years to see if your number of observers is staying pretty consistent in terms of like how many you're adding each year. Or maybe you had a really great year and then you can think about what you did that year. Maybe you did a training or you had an outreach event that helped you to recruit some more observers. So that is all the dashboards. Any last questions about any of that? With this one as well, you can download it like with the other one, so you can use different pieces of this for reports or for sharing with people. And if you ever have feedback about, I wish you had this graph that showed this in a little bit different way, that's information that we'd love to hear as well. We hope to eventually have this be an automated thing that we don't have to manually update, that is right there on your own kind of local phenology program profile. That's something we have in the works for next year, that might be a little bit.
Awesome.
Hey,
Yeah.
Erin.
Hi.
Hey, sorry I was late. I was having power outages here.
Oh, no worries.
So I just learned like a little bit of data analytics recently, and so that's part of why I'm here. And I know that you guys were using Tableau, which is cool because I kind of learned that towards the end of the program.
Awesome.
Is there a way that I could either could I help out with your GitHub if you guys have one, or is there a way to extract raw data that I could play around with?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there's
Sorry
a
if you covered
lot.
this already.
No, we have not. We don't usually talk about GitHub in these calls, but we do have one. Let me see if I have it stored on here. No, I don't have it. Okay, so yeah, we have that. We have a phenology observation portal where you can download Excel files with the raw data. So that's probably where you would want to start if you want to bring a file into Tableau and play around with it. So this is the NPN side of the website. We were just on the Nature's Notebook side before. So on the data menu, if you go to observational data, you'll see this link for the portal here. And so if you go to that, then you'll get into this whole tool that lets you download a filtered data set. So there's lots and lots of options on here. But the first thing it'll ask you is what type of data you want. And so the status and intensity data, that's like the most raw format, where each row in the Excel file is going to be one of those yes or no answers to the datasheet question. And so this also gives you the intensity information. So if someone said a yes, then there might also be a record about like the percentage of open flowers or the number of leaf buds. So that's where you get all of that data. We also have some summarized formats. So that would be, whether there's instead of a row being a yes or no, it would be an onset and an end date for an entire life cycle stage. So you would say, for this plant, because this is individual phenometrics, breaking leaf buds started on day 35 and it ended, the last yes was on day 70 something. And so that's kind of like one onset and end record. And then the site phenometrics is where it actually summarizes if you have multiple individuals at a site, it'll give you an average. So it'll say if you had like 3 red maples, it'll give you the average onset and the average end date. And then the magnitude phenometrics it's a little more complicated, but have you seen our activity curves at all in the visualization tool? It's basically like telling you, someone has, yeah. So it's telling you like the proportion of yes records out of a total population. So it kind of lets you see the peak that when something happened, like this is when the peak in open flowers and red maples happened over this whole area, because it's like a proportion. It will say like 90% of the records are a yes instead of 0%. So that's kind of a lot, but yeah.
I have a question. How is this different from the visualization tool?
Sure. Yeah, I'll show that next. Let me just go through just a couple of these things here.
Sure, of course.
So once you select the data type, then you get all these other options. And this is where if you wanted to go with just your local phonology program, you can put it on here. So I could do Audubon, California again. I could actually do all of Audubon if I want, or all of Audubon. This is where that parent group stuff comes in. So we were talking about that earlier. You can get everybody if you click on this part. So then I would set the groups. And then we can do, if you only want a particular species, and this is where you can get like all of one of the campaigns, all the species from there. You can get particular phenofaces, locations, and then you can also get all sorts of other information. This is that person ID again, if you wanted to include that. There's climate data you can download alongside the phonology data. So that could be a cool thing to look at in Tableau if you wanted to play around with different things. So lots in here, and I'm happy to go more into it if you want. So then, the visualization tool, if we go back onto the NPN website, that's here on the data menu. So it's we were just here on observational data. We go to visualization tool. And this is where we would explore all of the actual phonology data. And so there is a recorded webinar that's on this page here, if you want to get kind of an overview of how to use the tool. But you can also, these are kind of tutorials. These are each of the different types of visualizations that you can make. They each have kind of an example of how you might do that. So you can play around with those and kind of get to know. So if you click on one, you would see a little explanation of what you're looking at, and then it'll tell you how you can update it to show other species. Yeah, any questions about that?
Really cool. Yeah, 2 questions. So is it abnormal, or would it be okay, or have you heard of site leaders or site leaders that like make their own web page and display Tableau information just to kind of, special?
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen anyone else use Tableau. I'd have to, let me look and see if I can find anything. I know that someone at the University of Buffalo has created I think it's using I don't know if it's a GitHub page or what it is. I have to look it up, but he has made like a dynamically updating page that has data that he made. So I could definitely connect you with him if you want. Let me see if I can find that in my email really quick.
Okay. And then the second question was your GitHub page. Do you offer opportunities for citizen scientists that are, just learning data to help out?
Yeah, so we've been hearing so much about people that want more like data analysis and guidance and all that stuff. So we're definitely interested in doing more of that. We have a small group with a couple researchers right now who have used Nature's Notebook data, where we're trying to create like a process for data cleaning, because that's something where, you know, we kind of make all the data available as is. And so we have disclaimers out there saying, you know, this is data collected by anyone who wants to. We don't clean it. We don't, you know, remove records. So you have to do that step yourself. But a lot of people are saying like, well, it would be great if you could give some guidance about that, like how to use we have some flags in the data that you can use, you know, to really get at those cleaning steps. So that's something we're working on, and you'd be welcome to join that group if you want.
Yeah, that sounds fun, actually.
Cool. Yeah, and
Thank
I'm
you.
just trying to I'll find that other page from the University of Buffalo and send that.
Cool. Hey, Kirsten.
My dog was going crazy, so sorry about that.
Any other questions on, I know there's a lot of tools on the website, but
Just need to go in there and play around with it.
yeah, there's definitely a lot
Yeah, I
there.
didn't need to know that. Dashboards.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look for the other stuff later, and then I'll send it to you, Daniel. Cool.
Thanks.
So yeah, and definitely, you know, if you want a
To help us
refresher.
and how it's laid out and what to look for.
Oh, sorry. I think my connection's not stable. I talked over someone. What were you saying?
Well, I said just because to have that introduction and how it works and how it's laid out and how to utilize the information that's there. Super helpful.
Yeah, no problem. And we try to do this at least once a year where we, you know, talk about it on a call. So if you need a refresher at some point, and then if you are on the partner newsletter that we send out, we also put updates and reminders about those kinds of things too. So we'll say, you know, at the end of the year, it's a great time to think about your annual report, and here's a bunch of links to help you do that. So we try to remind you about the resources that we have at the right time. But yeah, always reach out if you want, you know, if you forget where something is on the website, or you have questions or anything like that.
Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone thought of any future call topics or anything like that, anything you'd like to go over?
Yeah.
Do you ever offer any like photography tips for taking? I know there's photo guidelines, but for say you want something on dragonflies, you know, just posting a picture of a dragonfly. If you want more in-depth identification tips, you've got to take like 3 or 4 pictures of, you know, the top, the bottom, the side, you know, if it's male or female or whatever kind of wing, things like that. So I didn't know if you offered anything like that. So if somebody wanted to add missing phenophases or something like that to the document, is there more in-depth photo training?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you probably are talking about that. We have a guide about taking pictures of plants and the importance of having, you know, one picture from far away and then a couple closer ones of things. Yeah, I don't know that we have anything like that for any insects, but yeah, we definitely could talk about that. Yeah, on a future call. I will definitely write that down. Thank you.
Is there any virtual phenotrail that exists out there? Like during COVID, has anyone tried to do like a virtual tour kind of thing? Or just, I guess I'm really asking for samples of nationwide phenotyping.
Nationwide, say that again. Trails.
Sorry, yeah. Do you have any good examples of successful phenotrails, and maybe even like a virtual pheno trail that maybe someone tried during COVID?
Yeah, so what would that mean by virtual? Do you mean like something that is interactive online that people can look at? Or do you
So,
mean like
like a virtual home tour? It doesn't give you the full experience, but just
like with videos maybe?
yeah, video, or kind of like how like in Google Maps you can walk down the street, and
Yeah.
look at things, but obviously this require more zoomed in photographs, but you could kind of walk down the trail, right, and then like observe things at certain locations.
Kind of
Yeah,
interesting because right when the whole pandemic started, I did a webinar with a company that they had already been doing this with the National Park Service, where they did these like, well, kind of three-dimensional scenarios that they videoed, and they were already doing it for like, say, a historic house that was being renovated so the public couldn't see it. And so they did this whole tutorial on how you can do this at your site. But the problem is you're taking the images, if you're recording phenophase, you have to do it every day. So, or every week or whenever.
yeah,
That
that's
just
really
reminded me, I
interesting
totally forgot
idea.
about that webinar. So-
Yeah, so that was a webinar.
You have that information.
Yeah. Is there a recording?
I can dig up my notes and figure out, who was this company that was, it was just like a little, it was two guys in San Francisco who were doing this. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. You would think that more people would have come up with something over the last couple of years like that. But
right, right.
the things that come to mind are, I know some of our local phenology programs have made story maps in the past. And so it's created through the Esri software, like ArcGIS, but it's usually
Oh,
a
yes.
map focused thing, but it has
Mhm.
things that you can click on that come up with, photographs. And I think the way they did it, it was kind of like a trail that you could look at, and then you click on a point and then it gives you information about the plants and like natural history info. I can try to find that. And I think that was actually one of the past students in this course, one of their deliverables that they made. Another thing
Okay.
that could be integrated into something like that is phenocams. Have you guys heard of phenocams? They're high resolution images. They're cameras that are like set up out in places.
Oh,
And they're repeat
But-
photographs on a landscape scale. So it's kind of like a wide angle lens. And so it gives you a picture of how, like forest phenology changes over the course of the seasons. So I could see using that, and like making that part of a virtual trail. And then there's other things, like there used to be this thing called Picture Post where people could go and there's like a stand that you put your camera on in a certain way and you take pictures and then you send them in. And so there's like lots of pictures at the same spot, and you could link that together and kind of do a time lapse of how phenology is changing. But I'm sure there's other better tools out there and ways to do that. But yeah, I like that idea.
yeah. I just learned about what the arc, what is it called? Story
Story
arc?
map.
Where you make so I haven't tried it.
Yeah.
Someone just was showing that to me at work. Yeah.
Yeah, there is I think there's some sort of there's a webinar series too that they had. I'll put the link. Sorry, my internet's really
Oh,
slow.
okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah. But I think it would be great to post that question on the listserv, because I bet there's a bunch of other great ideas out there. Are you guys doing your questions on the forum yet as part of the class? Oops, can you hear me? At some point in the course, I think you post a question onto the forum. Yeah. So it would be cool to ask that because I bet other people have ideas for ways you can do stuff virtually. Cool. These have been great ideas and
Great.
appreciate it. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Erin.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. And Daniel, I'll
Okay.
send you an email with the University of Buffalo page when I find that, and then I can link you into our data cleaning group too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a good
Sounds fun.
rest of your week.
all
All right,
right,
great.
you too. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.